Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There in 5 podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. In case you're new here, I'm a podcaster, a best-selling author, and a generally nosy person that's dedicated my entire career to excavating the female millennial zeitgeist. And today we have an edition of, I guess I'll call it Beth's Book Club, where I read something that I feel like really captures a solid cross-section of the things we talk about on this show, of our shared interests. And I will almost always read something that really sinks its teeth into influencer discourse. And, did we cover an influencer adjacent book last summer that was a bit of a swing and a miss? Sure. Thank you in all fans. My bad. I'm really excited because today's book, Yesteryear, by Caro Claire Burke, the author we're talking to about it, is a book that I genuinely, personally loved and could not put down. And I don't think I'll be alone in like my state of mind when I finished it. I needed somewhere to go. I needed someone to talk to. It was so urgent. Like, I finished it very late at night. I paced like a ghost. The room was on fire. There was visible smoke. Like, I stared at the wall, the ground, the ceiling. I stared at any surface, honestly, that wasn't a mirror. Because then I'd have to face the reality of my existential spiraling about the performance of self that I've chosen as my career. To me, a good book stays with you like long after you finish it, but a great book finishes you emotionally, psychologically, or otherwise. There's something about the discomfort of knowing I'll never know peace again when I finish something that I'm like obsessed with. And while it's been a couple months since I've read it now, and I am feeling better, thanks for asking, I was really surprised. I was trying to process, and all the while I had this like deep, dark pit in my stomach about participating in influencer culture that like honestly took me a while to shake. And I mean that in the most complimentary way imaginable. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I think the first thing I should say, and I want to be abundantly clear about, is that this episode does contain spoilers. This is a comprehensive conversation about the book. I went into it unsure how Carol would want to treat conversations about the ending because she's doing so much press. But the point of this episode was that when I read it, I wanted a place to go to live in its world a little bit longer in a long format. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. So today we are indeed talking about Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. A lot of you have wanted me to have her on the show because she has a podcast with my friend Katie called Diabolical Lies that so many of you love. So I've been wanting to like chat with her anyway. So sometimes this conversation gets off course because it's just like fun to shoot the shit with somebody that's like so interesting and clever and brilliant like her. I mean, I'm sure you already know this, but like Yesteryear, it came out Tuesday. It's Caro's debut novel, which is so wild because this book has effectively been huge since its inception. The manuscript triggered a major publishing bidding war. It already has been optioned to be a movie by Anne Hathaway starring in it. It's Good Morning America's book club for April. It's at the top of so many of your lists. I would imagine the Libby app's imploding. I used to check the Libby app when my book came out, and sometimes I'd just be like, Elizabeth, we need more copies. But I get it too. I want people to support the libraries. I wish I had the strength sometimes to just wait to rent a book, but I so rarely do. Anyway, point being, I think this is, very top of mind and on a lot of your lists. And it's less of like I discovered something. Please read this fantastic book. I'm not exactly Paul Revere, warning people the nap dresses are coming. They've arrived. They're here. They're frothing at the mouth with their raw milk mustaches, ready to read about a psychotic trad wife who like maybe time traveled. And who can blame any of us? This is like the stickiest, most timely concept that has one of the best hooks I've honestly like read in recent years, where a trad wife influencer who sells her pioneer lifestyle to her millions of followers. She lives on a farm. She, posts about her fresh eggs and raw milk and has so many kids who kind of like dress like the Dress Like Your Doll page of an American Girl catalog, but like every day. And she suddenly wakes up one day like cold and filthy and terrified in the actual 1800s, forced to reckon with the reality of the era that she's romanticizing and like cosplaying in modern day. And we don't know how she got there. It's hard for me to succinctly like review this, to tee this up, but I wanted to give you like some of my thoughts. admittedly, I'm not like as good at book reviews. People on the internet are so smart and so thorough and good at breaking down books in ways that like I actually have different criteria for them than I do like TV and movies. I've told you before, if I my idea of a 5-star book is like I had a great time. Like I really think that it's so hard to hold my attention anymore that if I read something like fast and it makes me think, um I like when there's some ambiguity and opportunity for fan theories and discussion. And I thought this book had such a twist, but also left some room for your theories and thoughts to breathe, arguably to stew. I like when a book makes my wheels turn, even if that sometimes looks less like moving forward and more like hydroplaning. It's still motion. Sometimes when something is like too clean of an ending, I walk away and it becomes kind of forgettable. And this book like really did have me thinking about performance and motherhood and what's real and what's curated and whether any of us would really know the difference anymore, kind of like Natalie. And I think that's what's so compelling about trad wives is like fundamentally, especially homesteaders specifically, they're like really trying to convince us how they're living off the land. But the confusing part will forever be you feel like they're living on a set, like actively making things harder for themselves for a sport. Like it's like people going to Burning Man, but with like less basic rights and festival midriff. You're just like, why are you doing something for fun that looks so miserable? And I always come back to what Heather Gay said on when I interviewed her about her first book, Bad Mormon. She talked a lot about how like motherhood being positioned as your divine role, like the highest, most righteous thing a woman could do, paired with training surrounding domestic labor and crafts and DIYing. The homemaking adjacent education she got in the church was genuinely helpful and made her like highly skilled in a way that you ultimately end up like kind of spearheading your own subjugation by outperforming what you're taught. Heather said that her theory is like, when Mormon women have maxed out every possible domestic pursuit within their approved role in the home with their kids, like they've renovated, they've decorated, they've had all the babies, they've started the businesses, like they've done everything they can successfully from the home. The only place left to go is like backwards in time to make things harder on purpose because you've run out of ways to be stimulated within those confines. And reading Yesteryear, it was so interesting to like Natalie was such a high performer and so obsessed with winning. And like she kind of was an example of a person that had like hit limits of what she could achieve and was, yeah, maybe like manufacturing some friction to feel like she could keep winning, I guess, in the eyes of the Lord and then in the eyes of her following. But I think like tradwife content's interesting because the discourse surrounding it is often like whether it's critical or whether it's sympathetic, it's always doing one of two things. Either these women are like victims who need to be rescued from their own choices, lest we forget the Ballerina Farm discourse from the New York Times article in 2024. Remember when she wanted to go to Greece but got an egg apron? That was tough. Or they're like villains making choices we hate. And neither one is satisfying because both require you to A, strip a woman of her agency to make your point, and B, like flatten someone's existence in ways we know isn't realistic because of how they portray themselves on the internet. And something I liked about Yesteryear is it didn't really do either. It kind of does both at the same time, which I think is more realistic and makes for a more interesting protagonist, where both of those things are happening at the same time in her brain in the same sentence. Like she can be a victim, like at the mercy of a system designed for women to lose, and a person like making insane choices inside of that system that are deeply unlikable. And I think Natalie is just, the book doesn't require you dissect like the real her because like I don't think she even knows that anymore at a point, especially after her like influencer era. And I think that like what was different about this is we spend a lot of time with influencers like obsessing over that gap between what they present to the world and what we perceive their reality to be. Like if they are who they say they are. But the book isn't about that gap between like Instagram versus real life. The book is more so like when the performance has been like running so long and it was started so early. The surveillance starting with God, then her family, then the algorithm and her followers. And by the time everything breaks down, like she doesn't even have the language or the tools to do anything other than go deeper into the only structure she's ever known. And she like builds a more extreme version of said performance instead of just like exiting stage left. And it's like crazy the whole time she like thinks she's winning. She thinks she's doing it right. She's the sourdough maker and the breadwinner. She's the one with the ambition. She's the one running the business. She's the one, you know, she's in this role, but like perhaps the most empowered version she could be in it. So therefore she's in control. But the structure she's operating inside was never hers. And she was never going to win inside of it. And later on, Caro talks about how it's ultimately these women that like hate them all you want, but they're the ones that really suffer. And it just, yeah, it's interesting to think through. I feel like every media outlet's going to like have to dance around the ending, but this is a long form, like a long format where we can talk about it. But I also want to respect something that I really believe in terms of clarification's great, but I also don't like to interrogate in a way that robs readers of what I think the point is, to like sit with your own interpretation, to ask yourself why you're unsettled, what you took away, and what it all meant, and then like read it again and figure out all the things you missed the first time now that you know how it ends. And you know what I mean? Sometimes I don't like when there's too much clarification on behalf of the author, the screenwriter, showrunner, or whatever in an interview that like completely wipes out a fan theory. After a couple months, I still think about this book, but I've progressed from weeds to trees to forest. And I know a person coming to this right when they finished it is still in the weeds and wants really specific questions answered. But I also am mindful as a reader and a writer of like wanting to know what was left purposefully ambiguous, what actually does have intent behind it, and like not being so granular that it doesn't let the discourse breathe right when a book has come out. And I was just so excited to read the book and have it deliver on the hype. Not that I didn't have any faith that it would, but it's almost scary, I would imagine, as a debut novelist to have this much conversation surrounding something that like hasn't even come out yet. And I'm so excited for her to see the reception to it. I think it's really cool to like, yeah, be talking to somebody whose like life is about to change. And I love moments of Beth monoculture where it feels like we're all interested in something similar, that we can talk about it. And this is why I kind of want to do a Patreon like addendum book club, because we recorded this before it was out. And now that it's out and I'm seeing the like dialogue online, I'm like, oh, there's stuff in the weeds that I do think is interesting to talk through and to be a space where people can like at least talk in the comments. And it sounds like there's a lot of book club plans and beyond. And I hope you guys have so much fun interacting with this book and enjoy this episode. And anything I left out, hit me up at Kate Kennedy and I'll try to include it in Patreon and we'll get another discussion going. I think that'd be really fun. So enjoy, and I will catch you on the flip side. This episode is brought to you by Hungry Root. And you know what they say? Why buy the cow when you can get the milk delivered to you from a grocery delivery service like Hungry Root? I'm light years away from milking my own cows in terms of being hands-on with meal planning. So thankfully I have Hungry Root because it basically handles all my weekly grocery shopping. Hungry Root plans your groceries for the week, filling your cart and delivering everything you need right to your door to eat healthy every day. And Hungry Root is awesome because it's unlike a meal delivery service that sends you a recipe with partial ingredients. They send you whole groceries that can be used in recipes that they provide you, but they don't have to be. So you can like get creative. Cook one night, not cook one night. They give you an apple to put in a brie apple sandwich. Put it in the brie apple sandwich with the lovely 3-4 step recipe they give you. They're always 3 to 4 steps. Such a delight. Or like eat it whole. See if I care. And it takes into account your health goals, your dietary preferences, your budget to curate a custom delivery for you each week. And I think this is really helpful, especially if you have people of like different ages and meal preferences in your home. But also like sometimes one of us is doing high protein or low carb or trying to like eliminate something from our diet for allergy purposes. And Hungry Root learns your tastes and your dietary needs over time and tailors your deliveries accordingly. And what's nice as a food allergy person, once you know an ingredient to avoid like gluten or dairy or whatever, it stays on your blocked list. And they have like over 1,000 grocery items like smoothies, snacks, sweets, salad kits, ready to eat meals. It's so convenient to not have to go to the grocery store and just have like a box delivered to you that has meals and snacks and sweets and like little things that you can graze on, but also just like the meal planning aspect of having options for ways to use those ingredients. And all the while I feel better about it because I'm not wasting food. If I don't feel like cooking, I'll just use it elsewhere. They hold all their food to like high standards, and I've found so many brands through Hunger that I didn't know about that now I'm obsessed with. And they'll send me even like Swedish fish, just like from a slightly healthier brand somehow, and it still tastes delicious. And I wouldn't even know to ask for it or look for it, but they just know me so well. You're going to love Hungry as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first order, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5 and use code BeThereIn5. That's hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5 to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. This episode is also brought to you by Wayfair. It's Way Day at Wayfair. From April 25th through the 27th, you can score the best deals in-home, like up to 80% off with free shipping on everything. Wayfair makes it easy to find exactly what fits your style and needs, from furniture and decor to home improvement and outdoor essentials. And it's all on sale, so you know you're getting a quality piece no matter your budget. I'm in the process of trying to do a lot of like updates to my home since we renewed our lease, and a few years in, I'm less scared of drilling holes in the wall. And I feel like it started out a little dark and moody, which is where I was in 2022, but I'm trying to update things. My husband so kindly was like, hey, maybe it'll give us a pep in our stuff if we don't have blackout curtains in the living room. And I thought, well, that's crazy. At least we'll get room darkening. But no. Guys, I made a big step, and from Wayfair, I did purchase more of a light filtering curtain that does allow me to see the light of day. And I'm no longer living like a vampire. And it's all on sale during Way Day. Upgrade your space with quality pieces that work within your budget. And the best part is everything ships fast and free during Way Day. Plus, you can shop with Wayfair Verified, aka your shortcut to the good stuff. Their team of product specialists vets everything by hand using a 10-point quality inspection. And this happened to me with my nightstands. As you know, I was on the search for a pair of matching nightstands that weren't hideous, that had USB ports, that could get delivered to me quickly, and, best of all, came pre-assembled. And obviously, I did look no further than Kelly Clarkson Home. I trust her with my life. And since my other nightstands have been gone, I can breathe for the first time. Even if you don't have that, installation and assembly services are available for a truly seamless experience, which is amazing. I have my nightstands. I'm working on a big boy room for my son. They have like so much good outdoor furniture. They have outdoor rugs. They have patio decor. So many like good accent pieces. They've really got everything you could ever need in one place. And their filtering tools are incredible because it allows me to do things like filter by already assembled. And sometimes I'll just be in an endless loop of general searches for an item I need. And on Wayfair, I always get it done so much faster. And yeah, Way Day is the sale to shop the best deals in-home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through the 27th to shop Way Day. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
Caro Claire Burke. Oh my God. I am such a fan. I'm so excited to meet you virtually. Welcome to the Be There in Five podcast.
I'm so happy to talk to you too. Thank you so much. I feel like my work wife is good friends with you, Katie, my podcast co-host. So it feels like I'm really like creeping in on her territory here.
She is literally the best. And I have to say, first and foremost, like Diabolical Lies is so good. You guys broke through the most cluttered effing industry and are doing something valuable and intelligent. And like, it's such a good show, and everybody needs to listen to Diabolical Lies if you already haven't.
Thank you. Well, you were one of the podcasts that we had as like a North Star when we were starting. So it's an honor come from you.
One day we'll have to do Diabolical 5 or something. We'll have to all three get on the mic.
That. that would be chaotic.
I'm honored to have an interview with you because this book, I think I messaged you and I was like, I don't think I slept for days. I paced. I thought it's like, it was compelling. It was well written. It was propulsive. Like, you literally can't carry on with your life without knowing what happened type of book, which just doesn't happen for me very often. And for a debut, I mean, it's just, obviously it already is and will be huge. And I think that even the hook of Yesteryear is so incredibly strong. And I have so many questions for you, but I feel like I should start with Natalie. Like, I've never had an unreliable narrator and deeply unlikable person make me like laugh that hard. Like, she's saying Corinthians in one breath and Kant in the next. Like, how did you write her? Like, what was it like to spend time inside the head of somebody whose worldview you like fundamentally oppose? Like, I just want to hear more about creating her.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. It was a really singular creative experience. I've been writing for a long time and I've never written a character like her. I've never written humor before. I've never written a thriller. And so much of it was instinct and kind of like almost a tightrope feeling of don't look down. Like I wrote Yesteryear, I wrote the first draft very quickly. And I think it was honestly because I was terrified of overthinking anything. And so Natalie's voice was the first thing I found. And when I had the elevator pitch, I had the title, like I had the idea for the book. But when I started writing pages, I had kind of imagined like a more prototypical female protagonist of like very mindful, very demure, very relatable. I kind of imagined the husband would be more of a villain. And then truly, I kept writing pages and Natalie kept coming out. And I was like, oh, this is a problem because she's so in control and so out of control all at once that I kind of had to start thinking about how the book was going to work because she really is like a very forceful presence, but the whole point of the book has to do with like women existing under structures where they aren't in control. So it just became like a very complicated but fun dance. And yeah, it was really instinctual. And I don't know if anyone has ever talked to you about this before, but like for me, fiction writing is very subconscious. You can't think hard about it. And as much as you can have a plan, you will find yourself starting a sentence thinking that you know where it's going to end and then it ends somewhere completely differently. And that can either be fun or incredibly frustrating. And with Yesteryear, it was mostly fun.
That amazes me because I feel like there's so many strong structural elements and recurring motifs and callbacks and things that weave so well together that writing at stream of consciousness, it's kind
That's
of
the edit, baby.
Cool to see how that. Yeah. Well, also, but like I feel like you took really interesting, like even just going from chapter to chapter, flipping timelines, or like her doing Q&As with herself. The price of each item when she thought about it. Like, I think you just did something that's subversive, but also like accurate to how somebody probably thinks if she's lived her whole life thinking she's being watched. And I kind of like that Natalie, she wasn't a monster or a victim. I didn't really have to decide how I felt about her. And I feel like books are always trying to get you to root for somebody or hate them, but I could just spectate like I do Tradwife, like on the internet. You know what I mean? I was like watching. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, that's kind of how I felt when I was writing it. Like, I think that a lot of literature basically comes into the form of morality play, which is a very old, form of art. And it's basically like a story that is trying to teach people how to be. It's like you have characters who are behaving in a certain way to kind of show you how you should or should not be as a person. And there's a real lesson at the end. And again, this is not new. It's not a new thing that we do, but it is, a type of art, like this moralizing. And Yesteryear is not that. Like there are no characters that really function as vehicles for morality. But I personally didn't find any one of them to be the specific villain. I think it was really just like writing characters as they were and just letting them be as they are and not intervening too much like authorially, if that makes sense. Like if one of them said something bigoted or racist or whatever, you feel the instinct to type in like, and we know that's not good, but that would have broken the spell, I thought. So it was just kind of like, let these people be awful, and also let them be good sometimes and let that be complicated. And it was, I think, what kept me so interested in writing it as I was, coming back to it every day.
Did you have to do a lot of like research? Like something that I haven't seen done before this well is like really getting me into a person's head in terms of how they rationalize their terrible behavior so like brazenly. And it's like I don't know what goes on inside the head of one of these women, and I don't even know what I assumed. Like they just, it's almost like it's easier to assume they're being controlled and they don't have the thoughts and they just go along with their routine. But there's like a much deeper rationale that, despite being in a controlled environment, that's really internalized here that I thought was interesting to experience. Like, how did you figure out how these, like a person like her would actually think?
It's a funny question. I really think... I think what it was figuring out who she was. And then the biggest challenge was not getting myself in the way. So like, for example, the book is structured in 3 parts. The bulk of the novel is told in part 2. And that is the back and forth that you're talking about, where you have this timeline that's in the past and the timeline that essentially is in the present, showing how she kind of comes of age. Part 1 and part 2 essentially bookend that part 2, part 1 and part 3, sorry. Part 1 and part 3 essentially bookend that story, and they are each one day. So they're each a day in her life. And so when I wrote part 1, which is about 40 pages long, that was the first thing I wrote. And I was like, well, shit, this is way too long. I need the chapters to be shorter. It just wasn't fitting. But I was figuring out who Natalie was. And like, again, you follow her through this long day in the life, and you just see her essentially lying to everyone in her life, being kind of horrible to them, but also having a number of insecurities and paranoias about presenting in a right way. Her relationship to, you know, her spirituality is very transactional. But I think going through that writing exercise, it became so clear to me how she would act in every scene, in any interaction. Like, she is a very, very straightforward person in terms of the moral framework that she exists under. She has a very clear sense of how women should be. And as soon as I relented to that, it was like, well, I know what Natalie would do in this situation. And it was just making sure that I wouldn't get in the way of that, because I am very different than Natalie. I'm secular, I'm liberal, like I don't have 7 children. And so I think that was the thing, is like, don't second guess her instincts and don't tamper her down, and then just kind of like let it fly. And, you know, you can edit it in future drafts.
With stuff like, again, back to the theme of like being told it from a young age to pretend you're being watched. I just thought that was so interesting, and harkens back to my religious era, where like that's really the surveillance of God really does make your life a performance in a way. It's very Elf on the Shelf core.
So Elf on the I mean, God is the original Elf on the Shelf.
God is the original Elf on the Shelf. Did you consciously write her as a woman who has been performing for so long? She's like forgotten how to have a private thought, like with the price tags, with the Q&As and the imagining of cameras, kind of.
Yeah, there were things that came through instinctually. And I think the most obvious performance that everyone talks about is social media. Like, that's the obvious thing. But then when you start to pay attention to that, and I think I did it in, you know, when I was writing this, but now I think about it all the time in my own life. I just started to think about all the layers of performance, where it's like, well, Natalie is not just performing for social media. She's performing for her kids, and she's also performing for her husband. She's performing for herself. And then you go back and back and back, and you think about these original moments of performance. And I think you're right. Like, the surveillance from the Lord for her is one of the original moments of her being like, I have to constantly self-censor. Like, she's constantly apologizing to the Lord in her own head, of being like, that wasn't the proper way to behave. And I think some of that came through just as I was like reading the story again and again and again. But it's something that has really changed the way I feel like I even see my own life, where I'm like, wow, even if I'm home alone getting dressed for this conversation with you, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like putting on some makeup and I'm kind of performing for myself. You know what I mean? Like, it really never stops. And I think that allowed me to have a lot of empathy for her. And it really starts to feel like we're all kind of existing in Dante's Inferno, in terms of just like never really understanding who we are, or not having some layer of performance for either someone else or for ourselves.
Yeah, there was like a line. It was like, motherhood is its own special or kind of curation, or type of curate. Like, I thought that was its own form of curation. Yes, its own form of curation. It's just an interesting thought to have as a mom who didn't think she wanted to be one. But when I really unpacked it, it had a lot to do with portrayals of motherhood on social media. Not that we're tradwife adjacent, actually, more so the negative content. And I feel like there's performance of motherhood as, you know, your littles and all that is good and holy and sweet. And then there's the like irreverent, you know, kind of like speaking the truth type that can often like really fall into tropey shit about how the whole thing is miserable. And I think sometimes in that camp, like even sharing the joy is off-putting, so it gets left out entirely. And I don't know, the curation and performance of motherhood has such a profound effect on me. It almost affected my life decisions in the deepest way possible. And however, when you really peel it back another layer, inside of it really does, like, I'm literally performing like the world's like worst crowd work all day every day with my own kid. Like, you have to perform in front of a kid. You have to figure out who you are as a mom from an identity perspective. It's like, yeah. Anyways, I thought that was a really like simple but astute line of like, you're going to fall into this in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, to your note about the social media of it all and the ideas about parenthood, I think that we consume like on a daily basis without even thinking about it, so many opinions. And then we feel an obligation to basically represent what everyone wants. And I think to a certain extent, that's kind of like a basic understanding at this point of why social media is such a rot. But it really is when you start to think about it and think about the pressures of like, well, this person thinks this about kids and this person, and I have to make all of them like me. And so how can I thread every single needle and talk about something in the perfect way? We all experience that, even if we're not influencers. And then I think when you imagine the pressure cooker of being someone for whom performing online is like quite literally your financial lifeline. I think it was easy for me to start to be like, wow, this is suffocating. What a suffocating way to live.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about Natalie, but I feel like one thing too that I've gathered from people on social media in the more like trad wife MAGA camp of how just even the language used with how kids are spoken about. I think that like her entire world at first is kind of based on the aesthetic and control she has over like babies and small kids. And part of the maybe the trad wife fantasy, it kind of depends on children never growing up and the homeschooling and the sheltering, and it's like
maintaining
how
control.
How she discards Clementine when she ages out of being controllable. She kind of just like replaces her and starts over. And it just made me think about how these movements treat children as kind of the like props of their performance rather than people that are eventually going to become adults with their own opinions, because those opinions become inconvenient to the brand. And I just was curious how you thought about that part.
Yeah, children are so interesting because they are, I'm sure you have experienced this, like your gentlest and also your most tough critic. And like, I think that is the experience of being a parent, is that you go from your child loving you, loving everything you do, to really like storing every version of you and watching you all the time and judging you and criticizing you. I think that like part of being a child, some of the first people that you start to really think about are your parents. Even if you love them unconditionally, you just start to really look at it because you have had so much access to them. And often as a child, you can see your parent. Maybe your parent is one of the first people in the world that you witness performing in different ways to different people. And so I think that they can provide, like, that's sort of like an educating part of being a human, but it also creates like a very delicate relationship between parent and child. I am always more interested in the experiences of children than the actual influencers. Like, I don't know if that's a personal thing, but I think we're just starting to hear from the children of these influencers. Like, I think the Duggars were the first, but obviously Sherry Franke has come out with her memoir with her mother, Ruby Franke. Like, you know, when I think about the Nealman family, I think about those children. You think about like the children of celebrities. There is just a certain element of these little people getting access to like the truth, but also not even knowing what to do, but like being receptacles for it. And so I am always interested in that personally. But then when I was writing from Natalie's perspective, it occurred to me that there would be nothing more terrifying to her than being stuck in a house with a person who is basically watching you at all times, remembering everything, keeping every score, who isn't fooled. And so I think that led to like a really, really fraught relationship with her children that I think only escalates as the novel goes on. And it was really interesting for me and kind of cathartic to play that out.
Yeah, because I don't think people always see that side of it, the genuine negligence of rejecting modern society in a way that completely doesn't prepare your kids to enter it and leaves them at a tremendous disadvantage and denies them of educational and social tools to function in the world that they as adults will spend the majority of their life in for the sake of keeping them sheltered and controlled under your really specific standards for like the bad world outside. And that's why Mary at the end, like, that was just such a beautiful part that I'll get to in a minute. But, well, I guess to go back to Ruby Franke and or Sherry Frankie. I can take this out if you don't want to be asked this, because I feel like if I were you, this would annoy me. But like in
Ask
terms
away,
of your
baby.
inspiration,
I'm 2 weeks into press. There's nothing you could say to me
Okay.
that hasn't triggered me already.
The Ballerina Farm of it all. Like, I think that there's certain influencers that mirror these situations that can serve as inspiration, but like
Totally.
people are going to probably directly ask you about that a lot. Or the end was so like the end like shook me in the way the Ruby Franke story kind of did, and it was a really interesting blend of like themes we see with specific people. Do people ask you about the specific people that were your inspiration, or were they?
Yeah, totally. People ask me all the time. I mean, I think it's not. Well, I was just about to be like, it's public knowledge, but I don't know if anyone cares about me, so I'm not going to assume that. But yeah, I mean, like, I became involved in the Tradwife discourse because I found the Ballerina Farm Instagram account. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. And I would also note that account, which I don't check in on very frequently anymore because I'm working on other projects, but which I used to check in on, has changed quite a bit tonally. And when I stumbled upon it, 2.5 years ago, there was a pretty heavy Christian vibe. There was a pretty heavy, like, we work from the land, we have no nannies, it's just us. That has since changed, of course. They've changed their tune and they're much more open about the fact that they have, a whole company working there. But that was intoxicating to me. And I think that that's something that I always try to point out is like, I didn't write about this topic because I thought it was silly. I wrote about it because I'm like, I can completely understand why women are obsessed with this. It is completely... I have had moments of being like, God, but wouldn't that be amazing if? Wouldn't it be great if this wasn't a total fantasy? I think in terms of who Natalie is based on, she is very much herself. Like, I think part of this vision, part of like the binary of Yesteryear is the performance of her. And she is online a very generic woman, right? Like, she's very likable. She always says the right thing. And that is kind of how she succeeds online. She learns how to be what people want. Of course, we see her interior life, but I think that's kind of the gag, is that for all of these influencers, whether they're Tradwife influencers or even just like influencers in LA, whether they're famous people, we are only seeing the version that is online. And so I think what I would say is like, I don't really know who's the most like Natalie. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is because the whole point is that the version of Natalie that we see in the novel is a version that almost no one else sees, because it's as close to true as it can be. And she doesn't tell that to anyone. Even her own husband doesn't even really know who she is until maybe the very end. And even then, there's an argument to be made that he doesn't. I will say, after I submitted my final draft, maybe 2 months after, the Ruby Franke documentary came out. And I had been aware of that case, but you saw the documentary, right? Okay, so there is a section in that documentary that's so chilling, and they got access to her footage and they're showing her practice the same lines again and again and again and again. And I had this whole email thread with my team where we were like, that's it. Like, that is the closest I've come to seeing like a real life connection to Yesteryear, of seeing this. And it's less even about Ruby Franke, though her story is tragic and has certain threads connected to, the story that's in Yesteryear in terms of how they unfold. But like, it's more so just seeing that veil fall. Like, that was the moment where I was like, wow, we so rarely see that with, and I mean, people are so PR-ified now. Like, we like hate Chapel Roan because she's the only celebrity who hasn't fully PR-ified herself at this point. And
she doesn't bother me.
Doesn't bother me at all. Doesn't even remotely bother me. But it is something I witnessed where I'm like, wow, we have forgotten that people used to just like behave as people, and now celebrities are so lock and key. And the same with influencers. Like, we just don't see them behaving like people. And Ruby Franke is now in jail for, numerous accounts of child abuse, but she's a real person. And so seeing that veil drop was the moment where I was like, that's Yesteryear. That moment of seeing her practice again and again and again and again. And so that was the moment I was excited about, because I was like, I feel like we got that part. And it just felt really horrifying, but in a way that felt really gratifying as an artist.
That's that part of the documentary is bone chilling.
Crazy.
And her kids thinking about growing up with somebody like putting on and off a mask in that way. And it's almost like Natalie's inner monologue is how I think Ruby was like to her kids that the internet never really saw. With Ballerina Farm, First of all, does it bother people always say Ballerina Farms? It's giving Nordstrom's. It drives me nuts. It's Ballerina Farm.
I've noticed that as well, but I also am just like, I am not even going to begin. I'm not going to begin to reinforce the idea of me being an expert on that by being like, it's actually, actually. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Actually energy, especially as an internet creator is literally insufferable, but I have so much of it. I also think too, that was an interesting point too about Ballerina Farm not really having the same vibe they did when they kind of blew up. And you're so right. Now
totally.
It's like way more focused on entrepreneurial ventures than like, this is just how we live as a family. We subsist off the land and we have lots of littles. And like, they
PR-fied themselves.
Yeah. Ballerina Farm is so deeply unaspirational to me, just by way of not being interested in the great outdoors. Having that many kids, or like, she always seems really tired. I don't know. Like, she kind of doesn't. She's an interesting character where like her life is a performance, but I actually think she kind of doesn't.
Is doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, never forget too that the summer of 2024, which is when I started Diabolical Lies, our first episode was covering that infamous article about the Nealmans, which was the Times article, which is where she went. And of course it was like, oh, this journalist had a vendetta. And now when you look back on it, you're like, no, checks out. And with Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which you just did an amazing episode on Taylor Frankie Paul, with all of that awareness, rising up, it's so funny to look back on that article and be like, yeah, works herself to the bone, check. Husband talks over her, check. Like, we're starting to see so many consistencies with all of these couples who are Christian fundamentalists. And it's like, was that reporter that off? Unclear. But I do think the Nealmans, to their credit as, entrepreneurs of like an 8 or 9 figure empire, they learned their lesson. They're not going to be religious in any way that's overly overt. They've got they got a business to run, and they're capitalists. And so they're going to get their bag, as it were.
Per your point about, so there's part of you that's like, wouldn't it be nice if like this was real, or if this simple life like was possible? And I think that the character of Shannon is like, she called her lifestyle a roadmap, or and a way out of the maze. And I thought she was a really fascinating character because it's like the liberal feminist case for the trad wife.
Yeah.
She's like a Barnard dropout with pink hair. And that's an interesting thing too, of like how the fantasy transcends maybe even political ideology, and how even women who would never call themselves conservative can kind of be seduced by this idea of like full resignation.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of something that I think was really cathartic for me to explore in this book, was like also pointing out how not appealing the promises of liberal feminism have turned out to be. Like, how much it really just is. Like, if it were as easy to like do the Sheryl Sandberg and lean in, like, we would not be so obsessed with the idea of like a woman milking a cow. I would also say though, beyond even like the last 20 years, although I think it has, like, women are squeezed now more than ever, this type of image appears again and again and again and again. Like, throughout the centuries, it is always the vision of like a happy country is always a woman in a dress with chickens or by a kitchen. It's just like, it's so hardwired into our cultural DNA to view a happy mother as like the ultimate form of utopia. It's like, you've made it. If you have kids and you're in a home and you're happy about it, you've made it. And so I think like you see that in like German war propaganda from the 1930s. It's so consistent, which gets into the whole thing of like, sure, Ballerina Farm is like the latest representation of that, but the visuals that were shared on that account are no different than the visuals that we've seen again and again and again. And it's just this it's this fairy tale that we are all conditioned to see and clock as like, that's what I want. And it's really, really hard to even notice that you're doing that. It feels organic. It feels like it's an interest that came from you, but I don't think it is entirely.
Yeah, to your point about Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, these the conditions that people are raised in, their personality forms around, are really interesting to unpack in terms of like what's prioritized and what a woman's role is, and the way motherhood's tied to like divinity, I think, is so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And I also think the transactional nature of Natalie and Caleb's sex life was so dark to me. Like it was about like reproduction. They weren't into each other, and Doug essentially he gives them $5 million to like, it's like a breeding contract.
Yeah.
That she like kind of took in stride in like the spookiest way to me. And I think that the I don't know, the transactional nature of women's bodies in this book was a really interesting way to like illuminate how these power structures work.
Yeah, and that was something that was interesting for me as well. Natalie has really significant blinders for sexuality and even for pleasure or for happiness. Like, I don't think that those are terms that even really are accessible to her on a conscious level. And again, those were moments where it was like, you can't overthink this, because if I did, my head would start to turn in knots of like, should she masturbate, or like, should I make her do one of those things? And like, again,
she like rubs on a pillow and is like, that wasn't bad.
Exactly. So that, it's one of those things, like, you really do have to just sit within this box, and the box is her brain, and like, it's very, very single-minded. She has a single-minded ambition, and she really accepts the idea of motherhood as like the only natural and most inevitable outcome for her.
My theory is that if you never do drugs or drink alcohol or get any other high, that the endorphins associated with the pain, agony, and resilience of giving birth is the closest thing to a drug these women will ever experience, and they're addicted to it.
Oh, so you've already come to like a fully thought through conclusion. That's completely correct. That's 100% true. You should write a book on that. That's like definitely better than mine.
This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Did you guys feel cozy inhabiting the Earth, as we talked about the Earth as a planet so cozily with the astronauts this week? I did. But I did so scrolling from my phone in my super cozy bed that is decked out in Cozy Earth materials. Their bamboo sheet sets, for example, are made from 100% viscose from bamboo, buttery soft sateen finish, softer with every wash, breathable, temperature regulating. Designed with an oversized fit that fits like thicker mattresses, which is great, and a gentle drape that settles around you just right and like keeps you warm when you're cool and cool when you're warm. And this is why babies sleep in like bamboo pajamas. And as adults, I frankly think we deserve that same comfort. I love their bamboo sheet sets and their bamboo duvet and duvet cover. Their like silk stuffed pillows have literally changed my life in ways I struggle to adequately express. And what thrills me is when I get to present to you one of millennials' favorite acronyms outside of the YOLO of our yesteryear, which is, of course, a BOGO. Today we have a BOGO. This Mother's Day, Cozy Earth is making it easier to give that feeling to the people who matter of not wanting to get out of bed in the best way possible because it's so cozy. Buy a sheet set for yourself and get one to give, because perhaps there's a person in your life that deserves a bed they genuinely look forward to getting into. And people always like laugh when you get mom's robes, but not all like fabric related gifts are created equal. And I quite frankly would love to get a set of high-end sheets. And also there's a 100-night sleep trial. Try them for 100 nights if they're not the softest sheets you've ever slept in. Send them back, no questions, and a 10-year warranty. This Mother's Day, give the gift that shows up every single night. Head to cozyearth.com and use my code BeThereIn5 BOGO for an exclusive buy one give one offer running from April 12th to April 18th on sheet sets. And if you get a post-purchase survey, mention you heard about Cozy Earth here, for the person who makes everywhere feel like home. I need to remind you on Instagram, April 12th to April 18th. That's like a really good deal. Also, I believe they'll honor my code, Be There in 5, after April 18th for 20% off. Okay, love ya, bye.
And like, Caleb is such an interesting portrait of a man, and it's almost one of the worst type of American men, because it's like, especially how he starts out, like he's not like evil, he's not overtly like this victim, he's kind of like nothing. Like he has no inner world, no ambition, no drive, but that sort of vacant vessel, finding something like the manosphere, is so incredibly dangerous. And that's when he gets a personality, and that's when he has strong convictions. And like, I think that was a really interesting part too, that you're early to from when you wrote this, is kind of like the conversation about that, and how like extremist content can fill that void for men who don't know who they are, for men who feel like slighted or whatever. I think one of the first like breaking the fourth wall moments, or whatever you would call it, wasn't there a sign in the cabin that she saw? And I was like, ah! But you still don't know what's going on. What was the sign in the cabin?
Was it the manosphere?
Yeah, I think it was
the sign in the front of the cabin. Yeah, well, also, if you want a real mindfuck, I would also encourage you to remember. So I sold this book spring of 2024. A number of editors at my auction were like, this is really timely. We have to get it out ASAP because it's not going to be relevant in a few years. And that summer, we thought we were going to have our first female president. So all summer long, I was like, what the fuck am I doing with this book? America's about to turn a corner. And it's so funny to think about now and have people be like, this is so relevant. And I'm like, well, isn't it funny that we don't ever really know where things are going to descend? Because like, again, there was like a 6-month period that I was editing this book and, we were figuring out pub date and talking about all that kind of stuff. And it was like, how are we going to present and market this book under a Kamala Harris presidency? And I mean, trip down memory lane. I know that feels like a lifetime ago for everyone, but I think about that a lot right now.
No, I just had to do a time travel jump. I was like, woman present. Oh, sorry.
we've never been close to that.
It's truly sick. That was kind of a fever dream of a vast campaigin. And it's almost like blows my mind how timely all of this is.
Yeah, it's enough to make you sick. I'll tell you that much.
Right. Yeah. Like you probably didn't even, you could have never predicted that the zeitgeist would be so horribly aligned with what this book is communicating.
No, never in my wildest dreams. Like I believed in the book. I also don't really believe in timeliness. I think that like if books are good, they're good and you'll always find something to connect with them over. But like, no, again, like I cannot emphasize this enough. When we sold this book, people still weren't taking Donald Trump's presidency seriously. And like, again, I have all these meetings because it was the most significant 6 weeks of my life, going to like these book auction meetings and these film rights meetings. And like, we talked about it so much during these meetings that it was like, well, this reactionary moment, it's a blip, like Biden's going to win or whatever. And then we had, the disastrous debate and all that stuff that we don't have to get too into lest we want to make cocktails at like 3 p.m. But it is really, really surreal to be like the manosphere and to be thinking about all of that. And like, I don't think that trad wives have become more popular. I don't think that would be the correct answer. I think that we're experiencing the shoe dropping of what trad wives represented. Like now it's very there are conversations about women that are just unfolding in the public sphere that we wouldn't have dreamed happen 5 years ago. And so that is what I feel like is it's not like there are 10 new super famous tradwife accounts. It's that like the tradwife conversation was a canary in the coal mine for everything else, for about all the different types of subjugation that we want women to be put under. And that I feel like is what's really uncanny.
I struggle sometimes trying to quantify how much meaningful influence these women have on people and the danger of that. How much it is spectatorship and the algorithm rewarding the most extreme example of gender role performance, and like how much of a problem it is. That's not the best way to say it, but I feel like you had a funny video that I messaged you about because I totally agree how you like something you're just not going to dig into is Alex Earle.
Oh,
like you're just an Earle
girl. She just announced her makeup line. I'm gonna buy her acne products, even though I don't have acne anymore. Just to support
I'm an
her.
Earle girl through and through. I don't feel the need to ask questions. I let her exist as she is.
Yeah.
And part of me, I think because I find Ballerina Farm's life so undesirable, she doesn't bother me that much because I don't believe any of it, but she like really gets under people's skin. And I guess I don't even know how to say it, but like I struggle to understand how much she's actually influencing people, like perhaps subliminally, about what she believes in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that approximately 0 people are going to believe me because I wrote a book about tradwives, but I actually feel the same way. Like I was very interested in Ballerina Farm and Nara Smith and that whole universe. Again, like for 3 months in the winter of 2024. And then like, I haven't followed them since. Like I'm always I'm kept abreast of it, but it was kind of like, all right, I've like thought this through to completion and it's kind of boring to me now. I think also there's something kind of satisfying about how everything operates under capitalism where it's like, yeah, they eventually became targetified. And so it's kind of like, even if 10 million people follow them, of which half of them are probably bots, and maybe like 1 million of those 5 million ever actually take time to like really think about any of the photos. And then like 100,000 of those 1 million really care about the religious undertones. Now it's just like, they're going to have a target line. You know what I mean? Like everything becomes kind of whitewashed under consumerism. And that's kind of a blessing in some ways. Like the political messages, I do think tend to fall away when you reach that level of success because you're just trying to optimize for so many people. And I think that company has just been smoothing its own edges for the last 5 or 6 years to just make itself more and more profitable. And that's a good thing, because now you don't have, someone talking about like the importance of even the raw milk. Like that was something I tuned into this year. They had like a little raw milk scandal, and I was like, wow, they're really corporatizing this. Like they're really optimizing to be very apolitical. And I think that pisses off a lot of people. But for me, I'm kind of like, awesome. Let her become Joanna Gaines, because Joanna Gaines means nothing to anyone in terms of like ideology. You know what I mean? So does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And I find the reaction to that New York Times article, people being like, oh my God, she's pro-life. And it's like, sorry.
Right.
Is that not why are you even wasting your breath asking her that? Like,
right.
She can't even participate in her faith tradition and have any like semblance of that belief system, I feel like. And it's so, I find it interesting. You have to explicitly say or do like everything you like believe in or your belief system. And then when people like nitpick at it, then they have a problem. But I just think so much is implied with these people that I don't get as activated by like one-off things, because I already like know exactly who she is.
Well, and I also think, I mean, this is something that I did consider when I was writing Yesteryear. Like, I think another person might have taken this novel and had like, I don't think this is a spoiler to say what doesn't happen in the novel. Like, I think another person might have been like, well, let's show this influencer converting thousands of women and like making them trad wives or whatever. But to me, number one, I feel the way you do, and I'm not convinced that's happening. I'm not convinced anyone has done that. I think women are dropping out of the workforce because they can't afford childcare.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they're becoming trad wives. But to me, the whole story is that like the closest I get to being like Little Miss Christian is I think that existing in some of these worldviews, you are the one that suffers the most. And I think that is the point of Yesteryear. Like Natalie is horrible. She's a horrible parent. She's a horrible spouse. She's not kind. She doesn't have many friends, but like she suffers more than anyone. And even when you were talking about Caleb, like that's her perspective of Caleb. We don't ever find out if he has passions or hobbies. We don't find out if her college roommate thinks of herself the way that Natalie does. We just see Natalie's perspective, which is horribly cynical of everyone. She thinks the worst possible version of everyone. And that's really sad. And that is punishing to her increasingly throughout the novel. And so that to me is like the real thing. I'm not convinced that any women are going to become conservative because Hannah Nealman makes good croissants. I think that like any woman who doesn't have access to her own financial accounts the way that Natalie does, any woman who believes that like her self-worth is attached to how many children she can bring into the world is going to suffer. I believe that. And so that was kind of the focus of the book.
Yeah. And I think that it was almost like a, not an initiation, but like I don't know. It was like passing the baton in a way. The one time Amelia's like mask drops and she like quietly says help and like kind of snaps out of it, and Natalie doesn't like react whatsoever. And it was almost like Natalie's, being inducted into like, we swallow our pain and we call it grace. And we're just going to move on. And like, it's like she was struggling in all these ways she couldn't really verbalize or even really pinpoint. Amelia is so far gone from reality in terms of her performance as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, that she tried to even be vulnerable for a minute. And it just like Natalie, the way she was like, there.
Yeah. There is so much. Yeah, there were so many moments during the book where I really had to, I think I've already said this, but like I really had to keep from adding my own analysis of what was going on. And that was one of them where it's like, there is so much to say about what's happening here. Even, right before that moment, Amelia basically offers Natalie, Valium, essentially. And
which I would have taken.
Same. I mean, I would take now. At any point. At any point,
I have a
policy.
Toilet, save it for a rainy day.
Seriously, if anyone listening to this, if you see me on tour, I am pro Adderall. I'm pro Xanax. Please give me your leftovers. But it's just all of the women are basically like sharing survival tips with one another. And I think for liberal women, it's very I don't know what the word would be. I guess it would depend on the reader, like off-putting, scary, unnerving. But I think the assumption that they are able to, the characters in this book, not all Christian women, but the assumption that these women who are pretty fundamentalist, that they would be able to talk in private and be like, well, I know this is bad and we're all self-aware of what's going on here, but like, let's just, it's like, no, a lot of them actually believe it. A lot of them, like, if you are never given the language to know what a clitoris is or what an orgasm is or what an identity outside of being a wife and a mother are, then you aren't going to have the language to talk about it in private either. And so I think that that was a really important awareness for me to carry through, is like, they're not women who are like pretending and totally aware of their own subjugation. They're women who kind of believe in it. Like these are women who are kind of like foot soldiers of the patriarchy to a certain extent.
And who really don't respond to like people like Natalie's sister, I forget her name,
Abigail,
Abigail admirably chose a life of like imperfection but freedom, who like hedged her bets on herself. Like that was so disgusting to Natalie, like that in a real way, that I was like, wow, you don't even have like empathy for your own sister, or can't even like give her a more empowering edit. Like you, in your bones, like, believe this shit.
Yeah. And I think that there's nothing in that moment, the moment of, you know, Abigail saying she's going to get a divorce. I think there's nothing more threatening to a woman who is basically trying to swallow all of her own unhappiness than considering the idea that she doesn't have to, and being like, wait, you're just going to leave? Like, that's not an option. That can't be an option, because if that was an option, I would do that, and I'm not going to do that. And so that clearly is not an option. And like this type of cyclical self-talk of like, well, you're going to ruin your children's lives and I'm the good one because I'm going to suffer well. And it's almost like a survival mechanism for Natalie as well, I think.
Yeah. And oh my gosh. I feel like now I'm thinking of there's so much I want to ask you, but I feel like I need to move to what I know people are going to want to talk about. But without giving too much away for anyone who hasn't finished, which I can't imagine you would listen to like a book club pod episode without finishing the book. But when did you know what the time travel actually was? Was that always the plan, or did you like write your way into it?
Yeah, it was always the plan. I remember, so I had the idea. I already had a literary agent at the time. I had the idea, I had the title, and I had like the rough plan. I didn't know how I was going to get from A to B, like all the little twists on the way, but I knew what I wanted the ending to be because I knew my agent would ask, because I called her and I was like, okay, here's my idea. I just want to get your thoughts before I like go on this sprint. And she was like, what's the ending? Because this is heavy, like this is a heavy, this is a heavy book, and these are heavy themes. And you read the first few pages and like Natalie is acidic. And so how is it going to end? And I knew what I wanted the ending to be, and she was cool with it. I didn't know the epilogue. The epilogue was like a very, very last minute, like final days before submitting the final draft, I wrote the epilogue. So I knew up until that point, but I think the epilogue was really important to add.
I think that the added layer of not just like what happened to the mother, but like what happens to the daughters. It was such an important note to end on. How do you want to handle talking about the ending?
Up to you. If we want to do spoilers, I'll do spoilers.
Okay. I think a lot of readers are going to be dying to talk about the ending. The way it's so brilliantly built up to this moment of her losing it, but in a way that almost like appropriately isn't acknowledged, isn't diagnosed, isn't defined, as I think a woman in her position who the system is kind of rigged against would like trick herself into. Like, how much of that ambiguity was intentional? Like, was it left purposefully kind of ambiguous? Because you're kind of cycling through like, was this a mental break? Is there something slightly supernatural? Is this something else entirely? Like, what's real? And you're kind of like left grappling with what was real, what was a performance, what is mentally unwell. And to me, she's clearly mentally ill and delusional in the prison interview. But like, was she always this way? Was the delusion of being in 1805, that's when it happened? Was it Instagram that was a trigger? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of curious if there is a correct way to think about that, or if the leaving the door open is kind of the point.
I mean, I think two things. I mean, I think first and foremost, you still there? Can I hear you? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, you went black for a second. I think first and foremost, I don't think there is a correct or incorrect way to do this. And so like for any readers listening, there was a lot of intent put into leaving certain things open. So you're not right or wrong if you come to certain
I'm listening.
conclusions.
I'm just going to connect my camera.
Yeah, you're good. I think for me, as I was writing, I very much wanted, and especially as I was going through like additional drafts and going through the book again and again, I really wanted to create a book such that if you get to the end and want to read it a second time, you have a different experience. So that was my first goal, which is like all these little Easter eggs, all these moments of dialogue that might read differently another way once you know what happened. Like having that type of experience was really important to me, while still leaving things open-ended. I would say that my perspective on Natalie is that her psychological fracturing grew worse and worse and worse. And I think something that I kind of learned about as I was, kind of just looking into this. I don't have any one diagnosis for her. I don't know that there would be. I think she just kind of loses her mind. But I very much wanted to show that there is kind of a moving in and out of lucidity. It's not like one day you're yourself and then the next day you're totally different. It's kind of like moving in and out of these kind of stages of psychosis, which I think is more true to life. But yeah, I mean, I think my hope is that anyone who reads it a second time has a different experience with the book. And then beyond that, I do think that there is plenty of room for people to have different perspectives.
It's almost like the whole time she like wasn't well in certain ways. I don't know how to diagnose it, but it was just like it's almost seemed like a level of such extreme disassociation. And like that, what was so clever is her kids like leaving and not talking to her, and then her starting over and having this like new batch of kids. Like I literally couldn't for the life of me figure out what was going on. And it was such a creative, interesting, thought-provoking way to end the book.
Yeah, and I think so much of Yesteryear is absurd, and it exists kind of in a vacuum. Like it's a series of very claustrophobic spaces. It's like Yesteryear Ranch, and then it's this 1800s house, and then it's her stuck in her in-laws. She is very rarely engaging with the world, except for basically when she's in college, and even then, very quickly she cloisters herself. And so I think it was important at the end to add like a little bit of real world consequence and be like, yeah, these things do eventually catch up to her. And she does eventually have to interact quite directly with the world, and her children do as well. And they have to basically suffer from the disadvantages that she put them at, not just by her, psychological issues, but by her refusal to let them be in the world, by her kind of insisting from the very jump that they stay cloistered away, that they stay homeschooled, that they don't have a relationship to the world, that they are taught that the world is a terrible place. And so that was satisfying for me, because it was a claustrophobic writing experience of being like, only a certain number of characters, they don't go different places, they are very, very insulated, very paranoid. And so forcing their paranoia to be kind of exposed to the world was really kind of something that I feel like I had to do for myself after so much time of being in their heads.
When her and Caleb like walk away together after it all, I'm like, is this love? Is this codependence? Is this people who never interact with anyone else and have nowhere else to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think any of those except love would probably be correct.
Yeah. Yeah, like do you have sympathy or empathy for Natalie?
Yeah, I love Natalie. I'm like, Natalie is my favorite character I've ever spent time with. I think she's awful, but like, I mean, Katie and I are always joke. We have like a running motto now, which is like, let women be awful. Like, she's a bad person. And of course, the term that everyone uses is like an unlikable woman. But what I always think about is like, there are plenty of movies and books with horrific men at the center. And the term that's always used for them is anti-hero, because we're perfectly comfortable with men being fucking sociopaths and still finding them worthy of interrogation. I think Natalie is a woman who feels increasingly desperate and acts in desperate ways. And whether or not the desperation is real is kind of beside the point, because it's real to her. And so for me, there were so many redeeming qualities to her. And even with women that I detest in the real world, I don't agree with their ideologies, I always have like a kind of grudging respect for women who like are confident enough to think that they can remake the world in their image. I just think like it's attractive to me, women who have that ambition and who even when it tips over into narcissism, it's something that I find interesting because it is exactly the opposite of how we are raised to operate. And so there was something about Natalie that was like very feminist to me in that way. Like she has such an ambition and it is just never going in the right direction. But part of that was what made me so enjoy being in her head. Like she's just always thinking, always.
And I think that tension of her being such a force with her being so performatively submissive was really interesting to digest.
Yeah.
Because you kind of think about what she could be doing with all of that energy.
Totally. Yeah, she could fucking be in Congress, you know? But she also can't be. And that's why like we still have like 3% female directors. That's why we still don't have parity in Congress. Is like even now that's actually not true. Women aren't able to do those things even when they have that ambition. And we're currently moving through such a reactionary period where, you know, everyone feels so bad for men because women have just gotten too much. So it is kind of funny because like Natalie is kind of right in the assessment that like, well, she actually couldn't have all those things. There would always be a man who gets more money. It's a cynical way to view it, but I don't think that it's entirely irrational.
I asked you how you felt about Natalie, and I'm curious if you think Natalie thinks she deserved what happened to her, or if she is ultimately kind of what we were talking about, like a casualty of a system that was never going to let her win, no matter where like she ended up.
I think Natalie, at the end of the novel, still feels victimized and misunderstood. That's my best guess. I don't think that she suddenly has come to see any sort of light. I think she still feels like there were a number of factors conspiring to get her.
Sometimes I leave books about like dystopian themes or broader like feminist think pieces where there's not a lot of resolve for the characters. And I was talking to a listener about this, like what's the next iteration in like feminist literature where like, do we explore what hope and resolve looks like? What's the next phase of this rather than like drawing awareness and exposing what this is and how awful it is and how closed of a circuit it is? But what I loved about the epilogue, I often am looking for a dose of hope, and sometimes there isn't one. But I felt like what I left with was daughters don't have to become their mothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even it was an unconventional breaking of the cycle. It was nice to know that this led to Mary smiling for the first time
in
her
I think
entire life.
There's a little bit of an element of like realizing the world isn't actually as bad as you think it is. And like there's so many bad things happening all the time. But like it was a real decision for me. Not again, given the details of the twist, I was like, do I want things to have improved significantly in the world? And I decided that I didn't. And I just loved the idea of having children be like, taking in the world with all of its flaws and all of the horror and being like, this is awesome. Like, oh my God, there are so many nice people. And like the ocean is so big. And like, look at how many people are helping us right now. And I think that was something that I really wanted, that really impacted me when I was writing it. And that I think about a lot is like, it's one thing to like accept the world on the premise that it improves, but just accepting it when it's kind of broken is, I think, really something that I have tried to start thinking about very often. And it just felt important for me, given the context of the story about a woman who kind of rejects the world. So I liked the idea of her children being able to re-enter it and, you know, with all of the trauma that they've gone through, really kind of fall in love with it in a way that their mom never could.
I love that too, because they're literally having the toddler experience as young adults, where one of my favorite things about having a kid is like my thunderstorms, his puddle to jump in. Like everything's so interesting to him. And everything is...
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. It's something to marvel at. He's obsessed with Mitsubishis.
Exclusively?
I don't relate. I don't... They're kind of boxy. Like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
But it's such a beautiful experience to realize all the ways you're kind of jaded and the ways you look at the world and so many things as an inconvenience, when there's like, so much to be enjoyed about it too. And I thought that was just a note I really liked for it to end on. And what was the role of Rena and writing that character and her kind of being this recurring force in Natalie's mind and like Rena being deeply imperfect too, but getting to the interview at the end. Yeah, tell me more about that.
This episode is also brought to you by Quince. When I say Quince, sometimes I do think of the movie with Marnie from Halloween Town called Quince, as in quintuplets, but I am saying Quince in case anybody was confused. Quince makes beautiful everyday pieces using premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and super soft denim, with styles starting around $50. And that's the thing, you guys. They sell cashmere sweaters for $50 that are such high quality, that have a high level of wearability. You guys, I got into sweaters. I don't know if you've heard of them. New garment out there in the world. In like the 2025 to 2026 winter season, I always felt I looked kind of weird in a chunky knit. But in giving Quince cashmere a try, not only did I keep buying more and more sweaters and wearing them constantly, it introduced me to a new side of myself that will tote around a cozy sweater like it's a sweatshirt, and it makes me feel more elevated. But because this cashmere sweater is only $50, I feel like I can like sling it around my waist or my shoulders and like bring it on a plane without like panicking. But it still holds up and stands the test of time, because I had a couple Quince sweaters from a few years back I had worn more occasionally, but they got moved back fully into my rotation. They still held up beautifully. I'm not even supposed to be talking about winter, because their spring pieces, they're lightweight, they're breathable, they're effortless. They're the kind of things you can throw on and instantly look put together. And I don't know about you guys, but I struggle to pay a lot of money for linen. The price to wrinkly ratio is not always there for me, but Quince has high quality materials at an affordable price point. And I'm thinking about experimenting more with some of their lighter spring pieces. And that same focus on materials carries over into their accessories, like their leather bags, which are made from 100% hand woven Italian leather and look way more expensive than they are. I get questions about this Italian woven leather handbag. It's so beautiful. And I've put this bag through the ringer. It's effectively like my diaper bag, my work bag, my travel bag, my everything bag. I'm filming my ads this week, so while I'm on camera, I figure I should show you. This is my leather handbag. Can you see it? It's gorgeous. I've had it, I think, for like a couple years now, and it's as good as new. I also recently got a pair of like square toe cognac colored ballet flats in that same woven Italian leather, because I've been having trouble figuring out what shoes to wear with like a more cropped pant. And these are the absolute perfect ones. They're so comfortable, but I digress. Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middleman, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Oh, and I also got shapewear recently from Quince. And when I tell you it's reinvigorated my interest in wearing white tops, I really mean it. And I'm running out of time, and I'll have to save that for another day. Refresh your spring wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/BeThereIn5 for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to QUINCE.com/BeThereIn5 for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/BeThereIn5. This episode is also brought to you by Ritual. If you've been here a while, you know I'm not exactly the beacon of health. I don't have the best habits, and I feel like one of the ways I have peace of mind is via Ritual. It makes me feel like I'm still hitting key nutrient goals with the daily multivitamin, and their team of scientists poured over thousands of studies to identify the common gaps between nutrient needs and what people are actually consuming across different life stages to support foundational health. And I just appreciate the due diligence they've done, the clinicals they've led in a category where they don't have to. And Ritual Essential for Women 18 Plus Multi contains 9 key nutrients and 2 delayed release time capsules designed for optimal absorption that are designed to be gentle on your stomach, so you can take it with or without food. And that is huge for me. Sometimes in the morning taking supplements, I feel so sick. And this not only has like a delightful aftertaste, which is hard to explain unless you try it. It's like a minty essence that makes taking your multivitamin actually enjoyable, to the point where it makes me actually remember to take it instead of avoid it. In those university-led clinical trials for their Essential for Women 18 Plus multivitamin, to test its efficacy, it increased vitamin D levels by 43% and omega-3 DHA levels by 41% in just 12 weeks. I've taken different versions of their prenatal over the past several years and delivered to you monthly. It's consistent, it's reliable. They have a transparent supply chain. They are vegan, non-GMO project certified, gluten and major allergen free. They're made traceable. So you can literally go on their website and know exactly where the ingredients come from and why they're there. And I just appreciate that transparency in this category. And while my habits might go in and out, I'm just grateful to have this as my literal ritual to allow me to fill in those nutrient gaps. Instead of striving for perfect health, aim for supporting foundational health. Save 25% on your first month at ritual.com/BeThereIn5. That's ritual.com/BeThereIn5 for 25% off your first month.
Yeah, Reno is fun. I mean, I think I really wanted Natalie to have some sort of brush with the secular world. I felt like it was important for her to experience it and then reject it. Like, that felt important to me, that she have that moment. And poor Rena, I mean, I don't think we know much about her. I don't think I know much about her. I think all I know is how Natalie sees her. And Natalie is very quick to be like, yuck, liberal feminist, no thank you. And so I think Rena quickly becomes like an emblem of the modern working woman and this type of person for Natalie to project all of her fury about modern society onto. But like, I didn't spend any time getting to know Rena because she only appears through Natalie's perspective, which is probably pretty warped.
This is something I keep forgetting, is she is indeed an unreliable narrator. And in her perceptions of people, yeah, like, because to me, Rena is such a specific type of person, but I don't really actually know that. But I think
she's
it was
a stereotype that we all know.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And one that would like the residency she had in her brain relative to the time spent with her is fascinating to me. But maybe that's the only woman besides the angry women that she ever really like interacted with.
Yeah, and I think too, she's a woman who never she never gives Natalie a vote of affirmation. And so I think that's like maybe always a source of resentment. Like Natalie likes to win and she only enters contests that she knows she'll win. And so I think that that's maybe also part of it, is like rejecting these women as they are also rejecting her. Like they are also stereotyping her. They're also kind of unable to see her as someone who potentially contains multitudes. And again, that's her ticket out. She gets married very quickly after. She never gets her degree. And I think Rena just continues, because that's also the moment she basically decides to leave the world. I think Rena develops this like almost mythical status, which is also why I thought it would be fun to bring her back to the epilogue and have a moment where Natalie's perspective is really obviously fractured and kind of give Rena that opportunity to be like a little bit more on even playing field.
It was really interesting for me to hear her process so much of like liberal female behavior as angry when she was like, Natalie's such an angry person, I think. And so
yeah, she's furious,
resentful. And for me, this is just a tricky thing for me too, because I feel like I still am uncomfortable with my own anger. I'm angry that I feel like I can't be angry sometimes. And like, it haunts me that like, there's this fairly popular influencer, I'll tell you offline, who was like talking about me and saying like, oh, I loved following her until like 2021, 2022. And she got so angry.
Oh my God, Kate, if it comforts you, when I allow my mind to go there, I'm like, the laundry list must be, and it's like probably not famous people, it's probably like friends and family members. So I get it. You don't come off as angry to me at all. Maybe I missed that period.
Yeah, you might have. I was considerably more angry.
Everyone was in 2020
to
though. Come on.
Yeah. I felt like I was going crazy watching people behave as like business as usual. I'm like, aren't you guys like mad? Like, do other people?
Yeah.
But like then that, you know, I think people that don't want to feel those feelings or acknowledge that in a space that's supposed to be entertaining feel a certain way about it.
I have notified all of my friends about this. I'm like, I don't need to know.
Somebody said about you.
Totally. It's none of my business, because that type of stuff can eat you up.
People are always like, other people's opinions are none of your business. I'm like, they literally are my business. So therefore,
yeah, true.
I don't need to know them.
Right.
I care to a degree, but the way that these things embed themselves in my brain is like deeply unhealthy. And I kind of saw that in Natalie, like myself and Natalie in a way too, of like, there are things that reveal parts of you that you hyper fixate on, and people that are these like characters in your head that have no bearing on your life that you think about constantly. But I also like agreed with her that like the way these women come across in DMs is literally insane.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you experienced that too, of how people talk to you is like, the most cliche annoying thing in the book is talking about like haters and trolls. But like truly, until you start to get messages that are so unbelievably irrational, projecting, confident in that who you are, they have a total grasp on, or just kind of like waiting for you to not be who you say you are. It's kind of interesting how maybe you're that person in other people's brains that
completely. Oh my God. Katie and I talk about this all the time. It's like a bigger conversation for offline, but like, I think something I've realized in the last 2 years that the people who usually end up hating you the most are the people who love you the most too. Like there is a certain type of adoration that starts out as deification and then quickly switches over into dehumanization. And that is something that I have started to become really afraid of, honestly. Like I used to be very open to talking to other people online, to being friendly with strangers online, to reaching out to strangers online. And I've had a number of encounters over the last year or so where I'm like, oh, I that trust is over. And I just don't feel that way anymore. And I'm much more protective of my personal life. I very rarely share my husband's face online. Like I have become a little bit paranoid. Or actually, I don't even want to say paranoid because I think that implies that it's not a real concern. Like I think it's a real concern. And Natalie, I think is I relate to her a lot in that way. And I also think the way that women are obsessed with her and also furious with her in the same way we are with all of these influencers online, it is symbiotic because you think that you're like holding an influencer accountable. That's my least favorite word in the word, accountability. You think you're holding someone accountable by like leaving a comment that gets thousands of likes. The real way to hold them accountable is to unfollow them and get off your phone. Like that would be the way that you would actually, theoretically impact them, but also like vote with your dollar, so to speak. But we end up being in these different situations where people will like, I mean, it happens with us with the podcast all the time, where people will like give feedback all the time and like hold us accountable all the time. But you're also not unsubscribing and you're not even not paying attention to us. Like you are deeply invested in my personal behavior. And it's a weird thing that we deal with now. It's like we're not equipped to know how to deal with that. I don't think our brains understand how to process that level of like intimacy combined with total strangeness.
And just, you don't really think about it till you get into it. The requirement of a creative career or wanting to have a voice and to especially to comment on things like influencer culture, which we both do, but then have the layer of having to like deal with elements of that ourselves. And it's like such a mindfuck to me at times. And I love that like meta conversation. I feel like nobody wants to hear like self-employed people, influencers, people that are public facing. I don't feel like there's a lot of empathy for what this experience is like, but I could talk about it endlessly.
Same. And I also think like I appreciate you so much for that. I think it's been it's been unbelievably important for me to have Katie as we've navigated this together. Like having women who are willing to talk to one another about this has been life-saving for me, because I agree with you. Even now I'm like, don't talk about this too much because no one's going to feel bad for you. It's just, it is what it is. And I think it's hard to understand the psychological mindfuck until you go through it. Because I certainly didn't. I'll just speak for myself. I thought, like in the whole name of like, well, you know what you're getting into. Like I thought I knew what I was getting into. And I have had like a drop into the ocean of like access of the public life. And it was not what I expected. And I think writing Yesteryear, I was editing this book throughout these last 2 years, which have kind of been like a baptism by fire for me. And so I think that probably is the part where I have had the most catharsis of writing through Natalie, is having this experience of like seeing yourself through the eyes of someone else, through the eyes of your account, and feeling like you're almost in this funhouse mirror and trying to stay grounded. And you're right, no one wants to hear about it. And so you have to not be a Natalie, and you have to be able to like have friendships with other people and find other people who are going through it, because otherwise you will lose your mind. And that has been a lesson that I have learned tenfold.
I might cut this out, but I was at lunch a couple weeks ago with Amanda Montell and Nora McInerney, two writers that I adore. And we were kind of just sitting there, and I was like, so do you guys ever feel like you've mined your life, your thoughts, and your opinions to the bottom of your existence, and then you have nothing left? And they were like,
yeah,
whoa!
Now you're like metering your identity out for like $3 a gallon.
But I'm like, these are the things that I like need to ask. Like, I have no idea who to ask that question to. Yeah. Besides like a very specific pool of people. And I know I'm the same way. I have an analog husband as well. I don't know. He just like, the thing I like most about him is that he hasn't Instagrammed since like his friend's bachelor party in 2017.
Oh,
and he's just,
the sexiest
it's not his
trait.
thing. Yeah, and it's like one of my favorite things, but not his. And I just kind of like leave him out of it. And there is something so spooky to me about thinking of us like rehearsing or running lines or doing a bit in our kitchen. I just can't deal.
I know. I think about that so much with mom talk and dad talk, and the way that they do that, and the way that like these people are like still not just recording and rehearsing, but that you know that they're doing it throughout like their trial separations or like a week before they announce divorce, and you're like, oh my god,
Yeah,
it's so
drinks
dissociative.
on me. It's like, oh my god, like how are you still? Quickly, how do you feel about the Taylor Frankie Paul of it all?
Oh, I'm working on an episode about it right now. Okay,
I'm excited.
Really quick. First of all, I loved your episode on it. I'm of two minds about it. I think people are very, very correct to note the bankruptcy of the if she were a man thing, where it's like, dude, she's already been punished. The Liz Plank of it all, where it's like she's already been punished more than our presidents ever have. I think that's very true. Mm-hmm. I also just think like she still has been, investigated for domestic violence multiple times. I think I'm really interested. I'm on like a real what is morality and why does it matter kick lately. And I'm really interested in like how we digest women who hurt their children, and like how we are just really unable to, we can't process it, even though like mothers hurt their kids all the time. And it's something that it's like an element of humanity that we can't stomach. We like can't look at in the eye. And I think it's so, especially through this era of like, and I think I personally will say in a good way, like heightened parenting discourse and soft parenting and all these things. And I think that it's much easier for us to digest the idea of men as violent. And when women behave in ways that are even remotely violent, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to call them. We don't know where to place them. We don't know how to categorize their behavior. It's like completely alien to us to conceive of mothers as being capable of violence. And I find that very interesting because like they are, Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it like that because I wasn't even zooming out thinking of that. It's like you watch this like stomach turning video and then you're like, oh my God, this video of this minor was sold to TMZ being physically assaulted by their own mother. Like it's kind of, and then I'm just like, I could never, I want to puke thinking of my toddler. And like, I also think it's really hard. Like we do not know the Dakota side of it. And like him even filming that and egging her on while he was filming it is, and he
sounded pretty sober,
disturbing. Yeah,
like he definitely sounded more sober than her is something. I mean, I agree. And part of the whole thing with women in domestic violence is they can't leave. Like they try to leave, and you know what I mean. Like you get into a cycle where you genuinely feel like you'll die if you leave. Dakota was not in that position. He could have walked out the door at any point. And of course, that you get into the whole thing of like, but he was leaving the kid there. But like, I think everyone knows that she wasn't trying to hit the kid. I don't know. Maybe that's my assumption, but like it's pretty apparent that she was throwing things at him, and that negligence is worth discussing, but it's very obvious that he could have walked away. Like he could have walked away at any point to de-escalate and did not. And I was rewatching season 1 of Secret Lives in advance like of writing this outline, and I'm like, dude, it's episode 1 of season 1. Like wait, what are we, there's no surprise here. It's like you find out he's a recovering fentanyl addict. You find out that she has like all this drama, that she comes from like a relatively broken home with a mother who doesn't speak to her very well. You find like you have a weird thing with her kids, and then you see her at this DV event with the cop. That's all the pilot episode. And so you just kind of, you're like, what are we doing? Like, what do we, there's just something about the grandstanding where I'm like, I don't know. This is pretty open. And I get the video is very upsetting. But her behavior and his behavior and their instability was the plot point for the first season of this show and has been foundational ever since. So it just feels very complicated to me.
Yeah. And the line drawing wasn't hearing about it, wasn't her pleading guilty to it. It was like seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's like a think piece, I think, too. And
very social media-fied.
It's so baffling to me to fight like that in front of kids, regardless of if you're directly like that. To me is like the abusive thing too. Like even just like engaging in that way in front of people that can't process it, who are then learning these communication patterns as a sense of normalcy. And like there's the report that came out of her like strangling him with a necklace in front of their other kid. I'm just like, I feel like there's a lot we don't know, but what I do know is this woman cannot escape her life being content, her abusive ex being a character whose conflict and response relies on her storyline, which is her meal ticket. It's like she's just caught in this machine. And that's what pisses me off about the show is it's like it's claiming to do something subversive with Mormonism. It's this, negotiated rebellion these women have within their like pretty defined gender roles and power structures. And they're acting like they're doing something. Meanwhile, all this shit's happening. There's so many layers to peel back. It's so much deeper, and they just never go there.
Yeah. Oh, they never do.
They exploit
it's
these women's
infuriating.
stories without peeling back the most interesting part of it.
Well, and you know what's so interesting that I've been kind of like noodling on is that with these reality shows, in the first few seasons, you have no leveraging power. And so for a lot of these contestants, my guess would be that they only started to earn basically like monetize their presence on this show in the last 2 seasons, maybe. Like the first 2, they're probably making like, I don't know, $5,000 an episode or something like that before taxes. Like it's not, they're not making buku bucks. And so you're basically exploiting yourself, exploiting your family because you're building a brand. And someone like Whitney Levitt, she did that perfectly. She had a supportive husband. She wrote it big, and then she got out when the getting was good. I think she's brilliant. And I support that. I'm like, dude, it's a reality show. It's like TikTok. It's like if someone's like, you're telling me you did videos to sell a book? I'm like, do you think anyone's there for fun? Like, what are you talking about? But I just think like with Taylor Frankie Paul, with all of these girls, my guess would be that Jessie is the only person who has a prenup. All these women are going to get screwed in their future divorces because why would they think? I mean, that's completely heterodox, even for modern people, let alone conservative. And so when I think about the financial scenarios where they have just gotten to a point to basically start making money after exploiting themselves for years, I feel a lot of empathy for them because they are really in it's like rock in a hard place. Like they've gotten to a point where they've really given away everything of their identity, of their safety, of their reputations in exchange for hopefully getting another 5 years and making away with a lot of money. But now who knows what's going to happen. So like I think these women have a lot less money than a lot of people would think, I guess is like except for Jessie who has that business. But yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive to have like a full-time makeup artist. It's expensive for your husband not to work and for you to pay a nanny. Like all of this shit, like these reality shows don't give you anything. I bet that they make these influencers often pay for a lot of their stuff.
1,000%. I think that it's like a lucky to be here type of vibe that they make sure everybody feels, despite them having like tremendous revenue generating power. That's like, I'm actually would be so interested to know what that like, what is a Macy making, like, are they tiered? Are they, what's it called? Favored nations? But they, I mean, I could talk about that show endlessly. And I also think that they're going to actually air The Bachelorette on Hulu because streamers don't have standards.
Oh, you think they are?
I think that, they like, I feel like more will come out. It will be contextualized. The tides will turn, and then they'll do it just on streaming or something.
What is your perception of the tides right now? Because I feel like people are already hammering Dakota pretty hard, but maybe that's just my algorithm.
When everybody first saw the video, I commented on like how much it jarred me. And then my next video was like, but we need to think about like how this is old news. We're just now seeing it. And the video was conveniently dropped the week of her moment, her independent venture, not before Secret Lives, the thing Dakota's a part of, just hers. And I think it's just so clear to me that the form of abuse going on here is just maximum impact, maximum destruction. And like, we have to pay attention to that part too. And people were not happy with like even pointing out that nuance that the day of. But I think once people started to kind of slowly be like, wait, oh yeah, we did already know about this. He's a piece of shit. What about the NFL? Like I think it almost took people a minute to not be reactive to the video at hand and to like ask about the if the punishment was proportionate, if why were we all of a sudden drawing a line and knowing exactly who she was and what she'd already done. And so I actually don't know where this week it is, but I will say, I at first was kind of like, I feel like this is maybe the right call, especially if a bunch of stuff's about to come out and they're, for their children's sake and blah, blah, blah. But then I was kind of like on Sunday wishing I could watch it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I would also just, 100%. I would also say, I watch crap all the time. I've never watched a reality show that didn't have someone who has been charged with some nefarious crime. So, like, I think we should all just kind of lower ourselves to the appropriate levels of standards for this. But I would just add on top of this, it's very sensational when you're looking at a video and a child is crying, and it's very hard to watch. But when you can take a step back, there are so many different levels of this where it's like, all right, well, let's consider, all right, you get a Mormon woman who had her first kid at 18, 19. Now she's got multiple kids. Now she's been stuck in this cycle with this guy. She now has a child with him. He's probably going to demand child support from her. She's probably received no proper emotional training. Like, you just start to add up all of the details and you're like, yeah, this is why every single one of these cast members has an unbelievably tragic rap sheet of all the things that they've gone through or all the details about their own lives. Every single one of them has a shocking backstory. And, it's not accidental.
The way I feel such rage, even though it's like so common in evangelical Christianity and Mormonism, anything like more on the extreme or conservative side of faith to con people into getting married and having kids young. It's like the idea of realizing in my late 20s, 30s, how I was robbed of my youth, my time to build my own identity, to realize what was lost in that, like, is a tremendous grief that I don't even know if people are always putting their finger on, that you can kind of watch these women slowly start to realize. And I think that gratitude interjects so much of it, because obviously you wouldn't change anything, you have your kids and blah, blah, blah. And you almost don't even let yourself like feel through it in a way. And I always say, like, I'm a person that if I really cared about male validation in college. And if somebody wanted to marry me, I'd be like, awesome. Like, I would have just done it, I think.
Same, 100%. I would have jumped into any relationship that anyone wanted. Luckily, no one asked, and that was a huge protective force for me.
I know. It's just interesting to think back on, like, wow, I'd actually like literally didn't have a sense of self, I don't think, until I was much deeper into my 20s. And now knowing the toll of motherhood on just my bandwidth and mental capacity, to a degree where I'm still myself, but like you're doing more sustaining than exploring. When they're young, I'm just like, shit, this must be really, really hard to metabolize for people that are trying to be more cafeteria about the faith but aren't fully deconstructing.
Completely. I mean, I was just thinking about the Taylor Frankie Paul of it all, and I'm like, dude, that swinging scandal, they were like 19. Like, would it even be called swinging? They were just like kids hooking up. Like they were so young, and we're like, oh, they were married couples swinging. I'm like, they weren't in their mid 40s bringing their car keys to a suburban party. They were the age that we all were in college. Like, it's just keeping that reference is so hard.
No, we treat it as the scandal of a century, when I think all it was the thing in college where you and a friend make out because guys think it's hot.
Seriously, that was it. But it was because the word married with kids, we're all like, oh. And I also think it's because they get so much work done that they look a little bit older than they actually are.
Yeah.
These women are on like season 4 of their reality show and they're like 24. Like Michaela getting pregnant with her first child when I think she was 16. That her whole storyline, yes, the Jace storyline is very upsetting. And my probably my own hot take pocket theory is like watching her skin breakouts and just being like, I feel like this is your body telling you to leave your husband. Like, I feel like you are processing, like, and you can see her. I think they're separated now, but like, even that, I'm like, dude, when I was 16, the idea of having a child and then having another child and then another child and then being asked to behave in a certain way for millions of people to decide how good of a person you are is such an unbelievable standard. And we just kind of like fetishize it, and it bums me out. And I watch it.
It really, I know.
It bums me out, and then I watch the whole season.
Us glossing over him being 21 and her being 16. It's like, it's kind of like the body cam footage. Like, if you really like process, like, that is sick.
It's sick.
Seeing them sit together in therapy and him being like, there was
Mad
one
that
season
she won't
where they
have
were like,
sex with him.
oh my God. Mad that, like him being understanding of this trauma from other people. That is him. While being mad at her for not having sex with him as a source of her trauma, no one's saying that, and he's so deeply unaware of it. We're even like airing this session, like it's so transparent what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. And like again, that's not even something that's like the top 3 stories that come out of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And I'm watching season 1, and like the big conclusion of season 1 is that Jen and Zach Affleck, Jen and Ben.
Mm-hmm.
That Jen and Zach are the most toxic couple. And I'm like, wow, this show really obfuscates like what is going on at any given moment, because all the stories are so moldable. And so it's really hard to ever figure out like, wait, who married someone at 16? Like, wait, what is like the real stuff happening here? And it's hard to keep up.
Even when I revisit it, I'm like, why don't people like Whitney? I just don't. I don't remember.
I just watched season 1.
She peed on a stick and put it in a cake. That was the most problematic thing to me.
I watched season 1 and remember being like the first time I was like, yeah, Whitney's a bitch. Duh, totally accept. And then when I watched it through a second time, I was like, this is crazy. Like the thing that she is hated for is basically like creating very standard boundaries, and everyone's like boo. And then it's like people get mad at her because she admits that like going on reality TV was a stepping stone, and they're like, she's not here for the right reasons. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm rooting for her big time. She
is doing the wrong reasons so right. And actually doing something for her life, for her career. And like, I don't know, I think her marriage has evolved a lot from season 1. And we also do kind of forget, like, I mean, Connor season 1, they moved to Hawaii out of shame from a Tinder scandal. And now like, people are lobbying to have ABC fill the 2-hour time slot with his magic. And I'm like, guys, I think
I love the magic. He's so unproblematic at this point.
I hope he actually is who he says he is. And like, I'm fine if he has his flaws, but because I almost want him to be an example of a man on TV who like actually tried to do the work and is like seeing a return.
I think he is, because when I was watching the most recent season, there's obviously this ongoing storyline between him and Whitney and Jen and Zach, because they're both out there, doing Dancing with the Stars. And there's a moment where I'm sure you clocked where Zach is like basically like mommy shaming Jen, but in a kind of progressive way where he's like, it's all good and I love you and I'm so happy to do this, but like, we can't do this forever. And like, I eventually need something for myself too. And it's like, kind of cloaked in progressive stuff. And then Whitney and Connor have the same conversation, and Connor's just like, no, I've got it. Don't even think about it. Don't even worry about it. Don't even think about how long it's going to take. Like, you've worked for this and I've got it under control. And I was actually surprised at how much that didn't even occur to me for a husband to say. Like, that he wouldn't be like that he would be like, yeah, I've got my magic tricks. Who knows when I'll get a job, but like, you're rocking and I've got it. And I feel like the progressive canned talking point that someone would memorize if they were fake would be like, well, we both need to be equal. But Connor's like, don't worry about it. You rock right now. We don't have to be perfectly equal. Like, you can go do your thing and I'll take care of the kids, and like, it's good. And I was so struck by that.
That I think is like, well, this is maybe a hot take, but sometimes I do think conversations about like domestic labor and the balance of household tasks and stuff, when it in the name of being equitable, it kind of, it's my experience with parenting, that the scale is ever tipping ever so slightly in one direction. Mm-hmm. But to acknowledge when somebody needs you to step in without scorekeeping, without naming it, without talking about it, but like just being aware of the other person's needs and state of mind and whatever. Like, to me, it's like, seems like this way to bypass not talking about it. But like, I actually, my experience, especially in the earlier, harder days when more was on me, was just like the best thing in the world was everything being taken care of and not having anybody like want me to know how good of a job they were doing and how to like, my husband never tells me, like, he spent 10 hours trying to get a splinter out of his foot when I was in Naples, Florida with my sorority sisters. Never heard about it. And I love him for that.
I also love him for that.
Zach wants Jen to know what he is sacrificing. And he did those. It was such a moment of talking points. And it was also such a funny moment of stating the obvious of like, he's like, it's really crazy that one person has to give up their ambition and their dreams and
it
work.
is crazy, isn't it? Keep going, Zach. You're almost there.
You're almost there.
Please keep going.
He's like, what do we do about this? And it's like,
well,
there's actually a lot.
It's also like Zach comes from this world where it's like, yeah, just to be clear, you would have expected your wife to do that for you to make a salary that is a fraction of what she's earning now. So like the fact that your wife is now earning 5x what you ever would have earned. I'm not even convinced he was going to fully graduate from med school, but like theoretically, this whole idea, it's like, yeah, welcome to the feminized experience where like you are expected to do this and it isn't supposed to be equal. And you're just supposed to say, I'm just so glad to take care of the kids. And for Connor to actually mean that and to embody that and be like, no, like, of course, yeah, someday would I like to have a job again? Sure. But like, we don't have to put a time on it. And like, don't think about it. You're not letting the kids down. You're not letting me down. You're doing this. It's so obvious why Whitney was the one who survived and why she's the one who made it off the show and why most of these other women like are kind of imploding with their personal lives. And it just seems like a very transparent exchange.
It really is. And I think sometimes when people talk about mom guilt, maybe another risky territory, but I think there's a difference. Like when I'm away from my kid, I really miss him and like I want to be there, but guilt's not the word. It's like I miss him. But I think the guilt piece comes from being so aware of what is going on at home, worrying about how it's getting done. Like the guilt is just so, I don't like that people act like it's inherent to our existence.
That's a really, really good point. I'm glad you said that.
I mean, I'm trying to get better about being honest about motherhood related stuff because it's impossible. It's so impossible.
You're not going to make everyone happy.
You can't win in such a big way. It almost doesn't matter.
When you talk about motherhood stuff, do you always get some sort of feedback? Is that something that you have to weather?
I think that I stew in anxiety about the feedback, and then usually the more honest I am, the better, like more responsive people are. But I've been scarred a few times from even just the premise of people being like, enough mom talk, people not like really adapting to that, my changing identity over time and like making it clear. Too much mom stuff. Don't talk about mom stuff. I'm not interested that you think swaddle Velcro is loud.
They're like, go out, get drunk, hook up with someone besides your husband.
This is not relevant to the convo, but you also did, I just remembered you did something about talking about mom stuff about sleepovers that I thought was
oh my
that
God.
I agreed. I don't mean to bring it up, but like
you're literally gonna give me hives. That was fucking crazy.
I wanted to talk to you about that so bad, but we're over time, and I know you're busy.
No, this is like a standard diabolical lies session for me.
Okay, good. Did you have a lens into the intensity of motherhood and child safety related opinions in that?
No,
like, people were intense, right?
Kate, I had no idea. So the TLDR, I did. I can't even it was so low stakes in my own head. I can't even remember my exact take, but to a certain extent, I was like, I didn't know that sleepovers are no longer acceptable. I grew up with sleepovers all the time. Like, again, with families we knew, but like, I was raised on sleepovers. And again, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She took care of us nonstop. I think it was very vital for her to work with other moms and have sleepovers. Anyways, I was like, I've been talking about Gaza. I've been talking about trad wives. And I do a TikTok about sleepovers and like, parenting TikTok descends. And I made the huge mistake. Again, this is my baptism by fire of learning. I made the mistake of thinking that I just had to clarify what I thought. And that was like, if anyone's listening and wants to be a person who shares their opinions online, let me disabuse you of that notion. The problem is not that you haven't been clear. You misunderstood. So I ended up doing like 3 or 4 TikToks with me, essentially capturing my increasing disillusionment of being like, oh my God, you guys have lost your minds. People were freaking out. And it just, I completely empathize with you being selective about how and when you talk about parenting, because it shocked me the level of aggression that people applied, and also frankly the level of worst case scenarioism that a lot of people exist seem to exist inside of that sounds like, again, I don't know, maybe they're going to come for me with this thought, but I was like, I understand being terrified and wanting your child to be safe, but like living in the world where you are planning for the worst case scenario at all times sounds utterly exhausting. But that's just my opinion. Everyone has their own opinion.
And I thought of this when we were talking about Michaela, like, it's almost like we see this tendency to shelter from the evil of the secular world amongst the religiously devout, but no communities are more marked by their sexual repression, their covering up of abuse, their like subjugation of women, and all of these things that create environments where abuse can thrive, where really bad shit can happen and there's no consequences. And it's almost a fascinating thing where I think that people are exposed to some of the deepest of evil shit inside religious communities that they don't realize is a function of their environment, and they point outward at the rest of the world for being the problem.
It's a feature, not a bug.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Right. Again,
it's a confusing conversation.
I think what struck me was that very quickly in the comments, people were like, there was an extrapolation that occurred immediately where it wasn't just, you can't let your kids ever sleep over someone's house because sexual assault can occur. It was, and also going away to summer camp, and also after school activities, and also, no, I would never let my kid go over and hang out in the afternoon at a friend's house, because even if the parent's there, you never know. And all of a sudden I was like, yeah, it really expanded. And again, through one angle and one angle only, I can understand that rationality, the word, blah, blah, blah. But it really struck me as like uniquely individualistic and uniquely American to be arguing through a progressive lens for why you and only you should ever be trusted to take care of your child is it just feels very capitalism pilled to me. And like, again, I think you can come up with reasonable explanations that again code as progressive and maybe in fact are progressive, but the end outcome is not ever trusting anyone. And that is like the implications of that as a parent are like, well, no wonder. I mean, it's already exhausting in America. You already have very little support, very little child care support. We're driving everywhere. People don't live with their families. But to add on to that, the idea of like not ever trusting a teacher, not ever trusting the parents of your kids' friends, it just sounds so lonely to me. I was just struck by like what a lonely experience that would be to feel obliged to parent in that way.
I remember like reading through the comments of that post because I was like,
clearly I blacked this all out. I completely forgot about that part.
Sorry, I'm bringing it up. My point was the women that were saying like they don't trust their kids with anyone anywhere at any point. You literally would like click through on their profiles and they'd be like, everybody wants a village. Nobody wants to be a villager. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, what?
That's the thing. It's like, and again, you don't like whatever, raise your kid however you want, but like it's so incoherent to me. And then I'm like, that's where I get to the point where I'm like, what am I doing on TikTok? Like, just put your phone down. Right. This is crazy. Like, I genuinely, this was like a week-long thing for me where my husband would come home and I would be like, I don't even know how to tell you how my day went. Like, I don't even know how we're like, he's in grad school. I'm like writing my book. We don't have a kid. I'm like, I don't even know how to tell you how vitriolic this parenting discourse about sleepovers became today.
No, and
crazy.
How it's now a referendum on your character,
right.
Your content,
right, exactly.
It's like, geez, it was real. I thought I was being casual when I uploaded it. It really is confusing what hits and what doesn't. But and I'm sorry to bring that up for you, but just know that somebody agreed with you.
It's fine.
Well, I would have never said that in the comments. God, no, can't publicly support you.
I was going to say, would have been nice to know at the time. No worries. Now that I have totally trauma blocked that, it's good to know that you're on my side.
I think about it all the time, how crazy the discourse was. But anyway, this was so much fun. I love the book so much, and I can't wait to see the reception of it and just how much this is going to blow up. You already have you sold the rights, Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
What can you just explain to people what's to come from that?
Yeah, I sold the film rights to the novel to Anne Hathaway and her production team, and they're working with Amazon MGM, and they're making a movie that she's going to star in.
Did you have like a movie I made it moment? Because in my head, that is an I made it moment for me. But it's there's so much that goes into it. It's a slow burn.
Yeah. I think I should have had a lot of those moments, but I think it has been so quick and surreal. Like everything happened at once. So I think I just mostly developed a barrier of emotional numbness to manage my lack of feelings. So I think I went in the opposite direction and just became more sociopathic.
High level, like, I don't even know how that works. Like, so
you're like, what's wrong with you?
No. I mean, like, literally, I wouldn't know how to sell rights if I tried. Does your agent, your publisher, are they like, hey, this has potential to be optioned. Let's take this out into the marketplace?
100%. Yeah. This was not something where I was like, I think I'm going to DM Anne Hathaway. No, this was like, I had my literary team, and then they were like, we're bringing this out. And then scouts also with fiction. I don't think this is true with nonfiction, unless it's like that book Strangers by Belle Burden, which, have you read that?
It's just started it.
Okay. You should
really
do an episode
taking it
on
out
it.
on my husband.
I would love your episode on that. But so her book just had a buzzy adaptation, but like, unless it's something like that, it's usually fiction. And scouts will basically, because streamers are like just constantly looking for more material. So scouts will move between the book and film industry. So basically, like, as soon as we sent out Yesteryear, scouts had it. And so our hand was kind of forced a little bit, where it was like, okay, well, time to go to auction now because they have it right now. So yeah, that was kind of how it worked, but it happens with novels. Like I don't know with many authors that it's like, I don't know if anyone makes the decision themselves. I think it's like you get notified that people are interested 9 times out of 10, and then you have the freedom to decide whether or not to pursue that. But it's not really like I would like, unless you're like really connected in the film industry and you're capable of, moving around of your own accord.
I think people are interested in like how that happens. Yeah, because this went to auction out to publishers, and you're saying scouts at the same time get it, so that the conversations are all happening at once before it's even signed to a publisher.
Basically, yeah. So
wow.
I did like 2 weeks of book conversations. We had the auction, and then like pretty much the next day after the book auction, I was starting the film auction, and we were having those conversations. So it was like a month straight of these it happened almost in lockstep. And again, this was like a draft. I mean, I'm very proud of it. It was a good first draft, but like, I did not know that this many people were going to be reading it. I thought like 3 editors in New York would be reading it, and it was kind of humiliating to be like, I mean, again, it was fine, but like, it was not a draft that I would have wanted, on like Anne Hathaway's. It was kind of nauseating. So I think that's also why I've blocked it out of my mind. I think it so quickly felt like it was out of my control that I think I just went into survival mode.
I find writing so embarrassing. I find sending things to my editor
it's humiliating.
so embarrassing. I find everything I do, like, it's just, yeah, I deeply relate to that. Like, the other thing people probably want to know is how involved are you going to be with the movie? And is that something, like, when you're kind of green to this, do you even, like, know how to, like, write in your demands in that way?
No, I mean, look, people talk about having, and I'm curious what your experience is with this. People talk about like how important it is to have an agent to sell your book. My experience is that like, it's so much more important for after, and for like the part of when your book, like understanding what to ask for, understanding like what to negotiate over, all of those things. I thought when we were going to the film auction, I was like 100%, I want to be the screenwriter. Like, I can do it. I have to do it. It's my baby. And like, and also what a big opportunity. And I had a long conversation with my agent, who I love, and she was like, you want to be a novelist, and this screenwriting gig is going to be like 2 years of your life, and it's going to be so much work. And like, unless you want to be a screenwriter, I encourage you to just be an executive producer. And it was the best advice I could get, because again, at the time, again, I don't know if you felt this way, but like when you're selling a book, you're like, you'll take anything. It's like, sure. I mean, this is amazing. I'm so excited. And also I have no clue. I've never done anything. So I didn't want to screw up any opportunity or turn anything down. But I took her advice, and I did not take screenwriting credits, but I did take on an executive producer credit. So I get like meaningful I get meaningful consultation. I've talked to the screenwriter a bunch of times. She's amazing. We talk sometimes when she's trying to, work through something. But yeah, it was really helpful to have someone to be able to be like, no, it's okay to say no to some things. Like, it's okay to think about what you want and what your time is. Because I hadn't started Diabolical Lies at that point, but I would never have been able to be finishing this book, doing Diabolical Lies, doing screenwriting, and anything else. So it was the right decision. So yeah.
And now people are very vocal about how they feel about adaptations and the differences from the book, and like can't even.
Yes.
I think it's just a challenging. It's almost like there's a part of me that maybe wouldn't want to be. I would want to inspire it, but not be over attached to its execution. Because even if I theoretically had say it's going to turn out how it's going to turn out from the powers that be,
totally,
and that would be a more frustrating experience.
Different. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not one of the people who thinks they have to be identical. I'm like, it's a different. It should be different. It's visual. It's a different form. I think it's like they have made certain changes, although like most of it is pretty faithful to the story, and I think the changes are great. I'm like, awesome. It's a different version of the same story.
I hate to say this as a writer, but I often am like, I think the movie was better.
No, totally.
Nobody ever says that.
Wait, what? Do you know what in particular you would use that for?
Something borrowed, or like I was such a devoted Twilight fan that I was like,
oh yeah,
and everyone thought the movie was so bad.
That's a great example.
But I think that it translated so much better to screen because the writing was so bad, but the story was compelling.
The story was compelling, and Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson and their weird little awkward love affair was the story of a generation. Oh my God. What a joy it was to be there for that.
Yeah, it was abstinence porn.
It like was. I was into it. I'm into Kristen Stewart's little lip bitey thing. I'm here for it. I've always been here for it.
Me too. I promise I've read books since Twilight Gang. It's off the top of the dome. I think some authors like want the reader to feel a certain way when they close the book. Others not. Like, do you want anything specific when people walk away from it?
Look, if you finish a book, that's the greatest review you can give. So anyone who like reads to the end, that's good. I very much agree with the whole idea of like I don't have to be peering over your shoulder while you read. Like any sort of experience with this book is a totally fine one. Some people, I mean, it's also like it's kind of got thriller vibes. It's got a big twist. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to not like it. That's all good. It's a book. It's not a policy platform. I hope people have fun with it. And every book that I've ever read, I've had such different experiences with. And if I finish a book, I don't finish many books now at this point. I'm pretty picky. And like, if I don't enjoy a book, I don't finish it. And that combined with the fact that like, I've been in workshops off and on for a decade. And I'm like, dude, every workshop I've ever been in, if more than half of the people in the workshop are like relatively warm with what I've written, I've been like, oh my God, amazing day. 5 out of 10 people didn't think it sucked. So I'm kind of like just trying to hold on to that where it's like, yeah, reading is so, it totally depends on someone's experience, what they're going to connect with and what it's going to mean to them. And all of it's fine. Any experience is the right one.
Yeah, it's success is making people think, making people talk. Like, there's no planet where you can close this book and not need to know everything about it, like regardless of sentiment. But literally, I've not seen a soul that has not loved it. I think this is going to be the biggest effing thing. I'm proud to say I knew when.
Thank you.
Anyway, I so appreciate your time, everything. Where can people find you? What's on the docket that people can look forward to with Diabolical Lies?
Save yourself and don't follow me online. I'm so sick of myself online. But you can listen to my podcast. It's Diabolical Lies, and it's a culture and politics podcast.
Amazing. And if you've listened to this podcast for all you know, Katie, Money with Katie, she's been on the show twice, and people love her. I love her. That's her co-host.
Yeah, we all love
her. But anyway, yeah, it was so good to talk to you, Caro. Thanks for chatting.
I loved it. I loved every second. Thank you for having me. I'm a faithful listener, so this was a joy. Also, thanks for reading. This was such like a nice reading of the book. You're busy.
Oh.
So thanks for reading the book.
Nothing drives me crazier than a podcaster that doesn't read the book. And I can tell.
You can tell. I wouldn't have been able to. I'm so delirious at this point. So you could have gotten away with it, but instead you read the book.
Good luck with the tour, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks. All right. Talk soon.